Here's some further clarifications on the whole Cage Sun argument. Now, the argument isn't whether Cage Sun goes infinite or not. Cage Sun will definitely go infinite regardless of whether it's a mana ability or not. Cage Sun doesn't care that mana was added by a mana ability specifically. It just cares that mana was added into the mana pool by an ability of a land. So if Cage Sun becomes a land and it triggers and it adds mana into the mana pool, then that trigger was adding mana by a land source and it would trigger again. That is not a question. First trigger is definitely going to be a mana ability because it meets all the criteria of a mana ability, but it also meets the criteria for this ruling here. I guess more specifically, it doesn't meet this criteria here. The same is true for triggered abilities that could produce mana, but triggers from an event other than activating a mana ability. The key word here being activating, which is different from triggers as far as I know, unless the word activating is different from activated. When we make Cage Sun into a land and we tap it, we are using an activated mana ability, which would trigger this, which would have been triggered from an activated mana ability, and so this would become a mana ability. But this ruling here has specific language that says if it didn't trigger from an activated mana ability, then it's not a triggered mana ability. So since the second trigger would have triggered off of an event that is not an activating mana ability, it's from a triggered ability, then this would not qualify it as a mana ability, which means it would trigger like a regular ability, which means it used a stack, which means you can respond to it. At least that's how I interpret it. And another argument that people are making is that this is just clarifying the first line, because the first line is talking about abilities that target are not mana abilities. And I think folks are saying that when they say the same is true for a triggered ability, they're saying the same is true for a triggered ability that targets. My issue with that is that this says an ability with a target is not a mana ability. An ability, not just an activated ability, but that should also include triggered abilities. Why would they add further clarification that a triggered ability that targets is not a mana ability, but if it was triggered from an event that wasn't an activated mana ability, then it's definitely not a mana ability. The way that I interpret these two rulings is that this is all the criteria you need to meet to have the qualifications of a mana ability, and these are all the criteria you need to meet to have all the disqualifications of a mana ability. So even if someone can meet all this criteria here, since they met the criteria for disqualification, then that makes it not a mana ability. That's the way I interpret this. Another thing that people have said is that a mana ability can't be like either or. Like it can't be a mana ability at one point and then not a mana ability at another point. I haven't really found any rulings to say otherwise that specify that a mana ability is always a mana ability. Like it can't like change or shift like that. I would love to be wrong on this. The original video that I posted about this interaction did pretty decently. It was doing pretty well, so like I would be able to repost that, but I do feel like I'm pretty alone on this kind of ruling, so I'm curious to know what rules managers might rule on this.